Welcome, everybody to Black Non-Believers. Tonight, I've got my co-host Maya, Cynthia, and Darante with me. We're so excited. I hope you enjoy the show. Are you ready? What's up? So good. Darante, Cynthia, Maya, we're here. So look, it's a new show. We're going to do this every other Monday at 8 or so. Y'all know how we do, but it's all good. Look, I just want to send a big shout out to Skeptic Haven for doing this, for thinking that it was important for us to bring our voices together and give a space for our voices to be heard. So I really do appreciate that. And I'm so thankful to y'all for wanting to do this with me, because this is something I have been upset about for a long time. Let's just go ahead and jump into it. When I found this community, it was just like something that saved me. I don't know. I grew up Christian. Forgive me. Sometimes my language is limited. But I really didn't have a community of non-believers, okay? Like, and so being able to go on YouTube, which I didn't even realize was a place you could interact or like meet people or make friends or any of that. It really blew my mind just to find a space of where it was like okay to be not a believer any longer. But I really did feel over time, especially the more I interacted with my family now as a non-believer, that there was just something different in the way at least I experienced Black Christianity. And because I didn't see a lot of Black representation in the atheist community, those unique aspects were not being addressed. And so it was cool for me because I was into the debates and the philosophy and studying and reading and different things like that. But I didn't feel like those things were really resonating with my people. And so just over time, like every time I met one of y'all or seen one of y'all, it just was so huge for me. Like that blew my mind. Like I'm not alone, right? And then so over time, I just was like, man, it would be really cool if we had a space and a channel. And so I'm just really happy to be here with y'all.
Oh, that's what's up, beautiful. Man. Yes.
Brought a tear to me eye.
So look, let's go around and just introduce yourself to the people. We have some time, so let's take some time to get to know one another and just describe our stories a little bit. They don't have to be completely linear or whatever, but yeah, let's get into it. I want to start with Miss Maya because she's down here on my screen. Yeah, Maya, I'm still your line. Who are you? Where are you? And how did you come to be a Black freethinker?
Hi, everybody. I'm Maya Adkisson. You can find me at Maya Adkisson because I am so witty with channel names.
So creative.
All right. I don't know. That is a great question. I was wandering around YouTube, and I remember saying to one of my friends that atheists seem to be really like nice. I'm kind of a political hobbyist, I call myself. And I was noticing that there were atheists doing a lot of charity work. And I was like, what's up with that? So I went to YouTube to kind of figure out how do atheists think, which of course led me to AXP. And yeah, it was all downhill from there. I was hooked. And I feel you though, Jay, because I remember thinking that the community is kind of white and male. And I mean, I can't even say I didn't feel represented. I wasn't.
Right.
I understood that there are socioeconomic dynamics that lead to white men feeling more emboldened to come out and be loud about it. And I'm happy for them. Right. But for Black people, we get pushed from pretty much every group whenever we try to do something that's outside of the stereotype. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of just having that dynamic, I was still intrigued and I still wanted to participate, but I didn't feel like I could really have a voice because I was concerned about it being diminished or pushed aside. And it wasn't until recently, maybe about a year and a half ago, when I was just, I guess, things going on in my personal life where I felt desperate enough that I was just like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go live. And if you love me, you love me. If you don't, you don't. And I had enough friends that I knew would have my back. And I finally felt like I could start to speak out. But I mean, I remember feeling, oh gosh, even like 4 or 5 years ago, turning down an interview on Neil the 604 Atheist because I didn't want to talk about me. I didn't want to put myself out there like that.
Oh, wow.
And it was Mikey that kind of spoke up, and he was like, you know what, we don't have a lot of Black people, period, in here, and certainly not women, Black women or women of color. And you may want to reconsider how valuable your voice is. And that actually did follow me. I didn't do anything for a couple of years, but it stuck in the back of my mind. So here I am.
Shout out to Mikey. Don't get me wrong. Mikey's going to be here. I know he's busy and he's a new parent, but I also don't care because we want him here.
Yeah, Mikey, screw your kid. Come on YouTube with us.
Oh man.
Cynthia, what about you? How did you get out here? Because you're somebody who I feel like, at least for me, like has been out here for a while. And I just feel like we're gonna have to touch on the things you've seen over that time.
Yeah. I've been out here in the YouTube sphere for a second. It's kind of interesting, and I do apologize for that screaming shout that's in the background. I was like, screw your kid.
No, but you're here. That's what matters.
Right. As my kid is in the background, just like yelling for no one knows why, because he's 3. That's why. Anyway, yeah. So anywho, I came out, I guess, like as atheist. I want to say like in 2018. I kind of did I was very much so a, I grew up Episcopal, and then I got saved at 18 when I went to college. I sang in the
and then you understood that as you making a personal choice like as an adult.
Right. Yeah. Like I confessed with my mouth and believed in my heart that Jesus died and rose and did all the things, and then called forth zombies to come out the earth in order for us to have everlasting life. So you know, and for a while there, it seemed like that was cool. But I was getting very disenchanted with the things I saw at the church. I didn't particularly care for the hierarchy. I didn't particularly care for the patriarchy. I didn't particularly care for the church hurt, the backstabbing, the backbiting. And yet we kind of all explained that away, saying that, you know, you're not supposed to come to church for people. You're supposed to come for the Lord. I'm like, okay, well, that's all well and good. But if your people are sitting up here hurting the other people that's coming here who supposedly need to be here, what's the point? Right. And so I think that like where the real problem started happening for me is when I was studying to be a minister and we got into the problematic portions of the Bible. And I was asking questions to the ministerial leader. Well, like, you know, I think because like we had like our pastor would teach classes, his wife, the co-pastor, would teach classes, and then sometimes we had some of the elders that would teach classes too. And when I would ask questions, when I couldn't really rectify certain things that we were seeing, then I would get a Sister Cynthia, you just need to pray more and then ask God to like open your mind and your heart, and the Holy Spirit teach you, you know, Darante, the crap that they say, because you used to say it. Anywho,
for sure.
Yeah, that type of stuff, right? But after a while, that non-answer was not hitting with me anymore. And so I want to say like around 2007, 2008, I started to kind of explore a little bit. I was really into yoga at one time, so I got into like the chakras and the smelling salts and the Himalaya salt and the crystals and all that other stuff. Yeah. In 2017, I started practicing Nichiren Buddhism. Tina Turner, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo people.
Yes.
So you were not a Christian by this time. You kind of
I had like a 10-year stint coming out of Christianity.
Wow.
And then like 2017, I kind of landed on Buddhism. But then I met my now partner, who was also practicing Buddhism, still does, but he was the first Black atheist that I ever met in my life, and was like out and proud. And I was like, whoa, a Black person who does not believe in God, tell me more. And he started to challenge me, because like I still had this notion of God belief and awareness supposedly of God, but I think that was just kind of like some of my residual Christianity. But one of the things I do appreciate, even though I really don't do a lot of practicing of Buddhism any longer, I do appreciate the philosophy, and it actually did lead me to being atheist, because in Buddhism there are no gods to worship. It's more so about building up your own self, right? And and also owning yourself and what you do and don't do. And I kind of like that whole concept of really owning your shit, right? And so after that occurred, and then I remember in 2018 when I abandoned my belief, is when I was trying to chant in my room. I had my whole setup going, and I had my beads, and I had my bell, and I was ready to go, boy. I was like, bang, yes, let's do this. And no, nothing happened. I couldn't get it out. I just started to cry. And the reason being is because that is when I would affectionately now say is when God died. I realized that all this time that in my life, I used to have this whole notion about if I was in trouble, if I had anything that was going on in my life that I needed assistance, I can always call upon Jesus, and he'll help out. Play Captain Save-A-Ho. And but then I realized that wasn't no Captain saving you, ho. That's just you on your own.
You on your own.
You on your own. So deal, sister, girlfriend. And I did. And that's but it was like scary at first, because like I was like, what do I do with this? Because I just started to cry. I'm like, I don't know what to do.
That's such a visceral scene, like just the aloneness in your prayer closet, and then realizing it, and
that I'm really alone.
That
I'm really alone. I mean, like, of course, like you have like your human friends and you have your family and things of that nature, but like this whole belief that you actually had on for the majority of, since you can remember, it's like, you know, it's gone. It's just absolutely gone. And I was like, oh my goodness, what do I do? And then I started to feel a little bit better because I'm like, okay, well, if I got through some other things already and there was really no supernatural being that got me through, it was just basically like me, myself, and I and some other folk, then I think that I should be okay for the next thing that's going to come up, right? And not too long after that, I would listen to a lot of debates, like I would listen to a lot of AXP. You know, shout out to all you guys there. Shout out to the ACA. I still work with the ACA, and I started working with the ACA as well, with the nonprofits. I would say shortly after I started doing my own YouTube show, and actually, excuse me, the way I got into YouTube is, I don't know if you guys are familiar. I know the Maya is, but a young person named Ethan Michael, who used to do Your Friendly Neighborhood Atheist. And he started his channel. I checked him out because he called in to talk heathen, and at the time talked to Eric Murphy and Bianca
On a call-in show.
Yeah, on a call-in show, and was wanting some advice on how to do his show and things of that nature. And so they gave him some advice and things of that nature. And he mentioned that he was in the Chicago area, so I decided to check him out. So I was listening to his debate that he did with a guy named Larry the Christian, who actually is like very nice but is an apologist and sorry, but while it is what it is. So I was listening to their debate, and I just had like a lot of reaction on the whole thing concerning like what he was saying, right? And then so I was just like, oh, now my dude, now this is a problem. I think that like I reacted really badly when they said that when Larry the Christian specifically said that we had more evidence for the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ than we do for the existence of Julius Caesar. I was like, hell no, I know you did not just say that, my dude. We got the death pass. We got coins that actually show his progression when he gets older, etc., etc. We don't got none of that when it comes to Jesus Christ. Hey, baby, how you doing? Hey, darling. How you? My decided to just come in. Okay, look at it. Hey, okay, yes.
Oh, yes.
It's gonna happen eventually.
So you got the little star. Yeah, he trying to get some little camera time.
Yeah, so he did. Oh, and he decided. Oh, yes, and decided to. Oh, yes.
What are we looking at?
This is the performance.
This is a performance of the kid deciding to go ahead and put like a whole like tube on his head because why not?
Why not?
Yeah,
why not?
This is the camera, honey. There
it's
you
a
go.
skill. You can balance it.
That's the camera up there. Okay, if you want that, yeah, all that.
Come on, give us a little down with the patriarchy.
Right, exactly. Yeah, just like okay, yeah. You wanted to say hi to the people. You want to say hi? Say hi.
What's up, man?
Hi. Did you want to say your name?
Hi.
Did you want to say what your name is?
Hi.
Hi. You just want to say hi? Okay. You want to practice anonymity?
Yeah, he like stranger danger.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, he was just like looking at my comments, and he's like, "Wow, you actually sound like you know what you're talking about. Can we talk?" And then so we ended up we talked, and then we decided to do a show responding to Steven Crowder when he used to do that change my mind type stuff. And going to like the different campuses saying stupid things. And so we did a stream on that. And then not too long after that, the pandemic hit.
Okay.
And one of the things that I do for a living, well, amongst other things, is I'm a social worker, and we started to get preliminary information back about the demographics of people who were being infected and dying, which was a large majority of African Americans. So so he invited myself and another guy on so that we can actually talk about it, and then Ethan was like, "This is a show. Let's go ahead and do this." And then that's when we did the 13% on YFNA and YFNA News. And so we started with that show, the 13%, where we basically talked about issues that dealt with the African American community, primarily people who, descend from chattel slavery. And then for a while there, I was doing it with the other guy, and then like he left, and then my partner and I started to do the show together, and then like life got busy. I think that the ACA asked me if I would come sometimes and do the nonprofits with them after they was seeing me do that show. I've been on Talk Heathen a couple of times. I've been on Truth Wanted a couple of times as well, and then I'd also met Mandisa, who's in the chat right now. Shout out to Mandisa. How you
Shout
doing,
out
girl?
to Mandisa.
Shout out to Mandy. Yes.
And Black Non-Believers.
And Black
Great show
Non-Believers.
yesterday, by the way.
Yes.
Or
yes.
Saturday,
yes. I was
Always.
laughing at you, ex-pastor, because you was like walking back, Doc. I was like, oh my God, is that so Christian? Like Christian back in the day. Oh my goodness. Ew. I was like, I was getting triggered. My bad. Anyway, so so we started. So we was working together as well. Because like now I'm like the lead affiliate in Chicago for Black Non-Believers.
Yes,
still doing the
awesome.
nonprofits, and still out here doing my atheism. I leave the computer alone. Leave it alone. Thank you. So and that's my story. As I'm also multitasking with telling my kid not to touch things.
I mean, he's 3. I mean, Darante, am I right?
Yep, they touch stuff. That's what they do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't need you. He was touching my work computer too. I was like, I need you not to do that.
Don't do that.
That's how I make my money, honey. No, don't do that. Okay, I'll stop talking now. Next.
All right, Darante, you're up.
It's very interesting because as a child, I got really into reading. And so I remember reading the narratives of the life of Frederick Douglass. I remember reading The Souls of Black Folk. And there was quite a bit that I was reading about Booker T. Washington as well, primarily because I'm in Alabama. And there was just so much available. Interestingly enough, I didn't learn about people like Marcus Garvey, Hubert Henry Harrison, even Carter G. Woodson until much later. And I guess that's because they were all up in the North or in the more northern arena, and the Southerners had picked who they wanted to support. But even when reading them, I noticed that reading them definitely gave me a different worldview than most of my peers and even my family at sometimes. But I still had this presupposition that God is a constant, and that God just is. And so even when reading some of their things, and they were highly critical of the church, highly critical of religion, but even as a young child reading it, I couldn't always see that criticality. It was just like, they're just calling out some things, but they believe because that's the constant, that's the default. We all believe.
Yes.
But I was definitely fascinated and kind of felt indebted to the kind of work that they did. And church became to me the vehicle for that work for, or at least I thought it was, for about 2 decades. And it was after pastoring for almost a decade when I was like, holy shit, we don't have any real solutions. It was, because at that moment, before pastoring,
because you just throw pastoring and people might not know. When did you become a pastor?
I started pastoring my first church in 2006, and I launched my second church in 2008.
How old were you when you started pastoring?
2006, I would have been 20, I think. 20 or right at 21.
And people come into you like you're their man of God at 20 years old.
Yeah, people in their 50s are coming to me for marital advice.
Yeah.
At this moment.
How do you feel about that when you look back at it?
Interestingly enough, like that was
crazy.
definitely one of those things that it was like, there's no way you take your marriage serious if you're coming to me for advice. This is like you didn't count the cost, my bro. Like you didn't think this through. Like what? You're not serious. You came to me because it was free. Like that, it was free, it was available, it was accessible. Maybe he'll get something right, type of thing. But it was prior to pastoring, it was, I would just go and preach at different places, get invited to preach. And for me, during those times, everything could be really spiritual. So, I can just come and I can preach that, hey, God is going to do these amazing things. And I could prophesy these things. And I could believe that by faith, if you do these things, God is going to do what he's going to do. But once I started pastoring, you don't get to prophesy Monday, and you don't get to prophesy Sunday and not see the people ever again. You actually see these folks again. You see them every week now. Right. And so then it's like, well, wait a minute. Praying ain't working the way that I thought it did. And it was funny because it created a huge dissonance within me, or a break in the dissonance, if you will, because it was like, it made me realize that I had given myself a reason why prayer didn't work for me specifically, while still believing that prayer worked for everybody else. And part of that was the environment of church itself, where there is this social pressure to pretend. And so when I'm preaching and I'm saying stuff, people are saying things are working. And I'm like, well, man, like, that must be how it works. I can't experience it myself, but they can get it, and so if I just stay faithful, then God will keep giving it to them. And you can do that when you're traveling from place to place, but when you're actually seeing the people from week to week, you start seeing through the lies that they can't see through themselves. And because, even though they're giving the testimony like, oh, this changed my life forever, and that I am now a completely new person, and that I'll never do this again. And then it's just like, well, you came to me for counseling. So remember, I know the other side of that story. And it got really somewhat frightening for me, especially during the time of Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, and start looking around, and because I begin to wonder, like, am I more of a distraction than a solution? Am I actually helping people, or am I just making it easier for them to just cope and not engage and not find any new ways to do this? Because I'm literally telling them, don't try to figure it out. I'm literally telling them God has everything that you need. I'm literally telling them, as long as you pray and you fast and you don't sleep with anybody you're not supposed to sleep with, for a certain period of time, God understands if you slip up every now and then. I'm giving all of these messages that have absolutely nothing to do with any outcomes that we're expecting. I'm telling people that if we pray this prayer, that your life will change. And this prayer is not going to protect a Trayvon Martin. It's not going to protect a Mike Brown. I'm telling people that if we just live right, that God will see, through and bless us. And then I started having to sit with the futility of all of that, to quote a scripture, just the vanity of all things. And it really began to bother me, because even wrestling with that, I was like, well, damn, you shouldn't be surprised it hasn't worked for you either. Because then I also had to look at my own life and just be like, holy snap. I thought I was struggling because of spiritual warfare. I thought I was struggling because of the devil. I thought I was struggling because of a laundry list of reasons. And then I'm realizing it's like, no, dude, you were doing magic, and that doesn't work in real life. And so... And it was a moment for me. But even after that, I spent 10 years kind of just in the house. Only people knew I was atheist were people who were close enough to me where I didn't care about their opinions. Because that's how that works. The closer you are to me.
At this time?
I stopped pastoring in 2014. Well, hold up. Wait a minute. Stopped pastoring when I became an atheist. I stopped pastoring my church, the church that I started. I did work for about 3 other churches after that. To be fair,
after you were a non-believer?
After I was a non-believer. As an atheist, I was an associate pastor of a church in Birmingham. And then I actually did try to pastor a Baptist church for 6 months, because I thought that, they don't believe in a lot of the stuff that I believed in as a charismatic anyway. And Baptist churches seem to be more traditional. And I thought, this would be a great opportunity to kind of just be more of a cultural role. I can use this opportunity to educate them on history, use this opportunity to get them more involved in the community. Apparently, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. So if there's any magical thinking, it's like, because the tradition for them was like, if you touch this table, God is going to punish this church. And I was like, oh, that's why I didn't go to those type of churches. So that was not a good, it was not a good fit. And so I resigned after 6 months. Yeah. I tried my hardest not to have to come out as an atheist. I tried
Right.
my hardest to find the most strategic ways possible to still be to be of assistance without having to sacrifice my whole identity and my whole history. And it turned out there was just no way to do it. You know, there was no way for me to blend in what I was trying to do with what used to be. It was just that's how toxic what used to be ended up being. Even when I was preaching at certain times about things about how we may misunderstand scriptures and sharing some things that would be highly controversial, where like, you know, you'd think that they'd be like, okay, you got to go, pastor. Instead, it was the exact opposite, that, yeah, that's right, you preaching good. But you realize like it's not registering. At first, I'm kind of flattered. I'm like, oh yeah, they're getting it. They're getting it. Oh, this is working. And then, you see them the next week and you're like, they don't remember anything I said last week. They're not even really listening to me. They're just,
Wow.
it's like when you hear a dope rap song, but the rapper's too fast for you. It's just like, you kind of feel what he's saying. You get the gist of it. And that's what they were doing with my sermons. They were getting the gist of it and being happy that I was performing it right. And then I realized, I'm like, for me, and maybe someone else can do a better job at it, but for me, I said, I can't help people this way. And so I just stopped doing that altogether. That was 2017 when I resigned from that. And so a few of my pastor friends knew that I was an atheist. Some of them did not. Well, most of them did not care. One of them, up until this a few months ago, was trying to get me to pastor one of his campuses by saying that, atheists can preach the Bible so well because they can see things in it that the believers can't say. And I'm like, listen,
Yeah,
I
they
am
can.
so beyond
Yes, they
the B-level
can.
student game, man.
Wow.
But it was what was rough
Wow.
about this time, and what really ended up kind of grinding my gears and kicking me out of just being silent and passive, was realizing, and it was selfish, like I didn't enjoy the conversations I was having anymore. While as long as I was kind of hiding who I was also having to hide the fact that I am not interested in half of the stuff you're saying. Like, I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who was like a dear friend, and I'd not told him I was an atheist. And we were talking. He's like, man, do you ever think about how Noah must have felt having to look at those dinosaurs and those people drowning in the flood? And I was just like, I cannot believe that this grown man just said this to me. And I'm like, I feel like I'm being inauthentic by not letting him know I think this is foolishness. I hate to say this, but I never talked to him again after that. Like, it was just like, and that's just one example, but there were just so many conversations that I was in, and I was like, I think I've not only did I kill my network by leaving the faith, I haven't given myself an opportunity to build a new network by staying silent. There are other things that I want to talk about that are important to me. The things that I was trying to do when I was a pastor, I now still want to do those things, just not with using prayer as a solution. I would actually like to try to solve some of these problems and, get my hands dirty. And I realized as long as I was surrounded by people in the faith, that just wasn't the thing. All of those things were things that God was going to take care of. And then just being as a Black free thinker, and this would be my last little tidbit, it was just in the atheist community, because I'd seen the debates, years ago before I deconverted, and I was very impressed, open-minded even. But like, even now, I'm just like, this is cool, but this is not stuff that, for the most part, the community is going to be very drawn to. And it's very interesting because it's almost like the same divide of evangelical Christianity and urban Christianity, where one is really focused on a social conversation and the other is really focused on the other people are the bad people. And I think that was really a thing that I was like, okay, I want to help bring some nuance, and I want to find some nuance in this conversation, because while, yes, we can point out all of these reasons why the Bible is crap, like, there's still communities out here that are falling a fucking apart, and some of it is because of these beliefs. And I'm like, what are we going to do about it? Because that's where I would like to be in the conversation.
For sure, for sure. So let me just give a quick shout out to some of these early super chats. Michael Beverly came through with 100 Mexican.
Ooh.
I don't know the conversion rate, bro, but that sounds like a lot over here. I really appreciate your generosity. Robin Webster, always good to see you, Robin. Thanks for the $5 US. We appreciate your generosity as well. And Black Non-Believers Inc., Mandisa, appreciate you coming through with the 1999. Glad to see the show. Congratulations. Yes, appreciate you. And please do check out Black Non-Believers. That's one of the things we actually really wanted to do as a show, was support that organization, because, you know, we don't have a lot of organizations for folks like us, and Black Non-Believers not only happens to be one of those organizations, but it's one that we happen to know. So yeah, please do show them some love. Also, just want to send a quick shout out just to the people in the chat. Just really appreciate y'all. Good to see PC and AR and Holly is in here, and Cat is in the chat. I don't know how Cat is producing and doing the chat at the same time. And look at the trees, and Don and Sumami and Tito. Titan is in here. Ember's in here. Pan is in here. I appreciate all you Delph. There's names in here. Scott Smith. There's some new folks. Oh, I love seeing all the new people that's new to me. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much for being here. Neil is 604 Atheist is here. I appreciate it. So something I wanted to mention real quick was, we talk a lot about the community, and it feeling like kind of excludes people like us. And I used to talk about something. I used to call it the white boy problem. And I know that sounds weird, but I tried to say that in a way, and I don't know how to say it, so I'm just going to explain it. I tried to say it in a way that was like, the problem is something other than explicit racism or exclusion. It's more an issue of demographics. It's more like we might have saying, like, these people have this space. They talk about the things that excite them, that interest them. And just as a reflection of who happens to be in that space and what they happen to find commonly and interest, it creates a certain culture, right? That's different. It's not like people were saying, no darkies in the clubhouse, right? I just want to make that clear, right? Because I don't want people to think we're accusing people of like coming after us. You know, sometimes when we deal with people on the other side or in different spaces, yeah, there's issues there. But I just want people to know we're not accusing people that. We're just talking about the experience of who's there, right?
Right. And yeah, since I made the comment,
Maya.
I do want to.
Yeah, for sure.
Since I made the comment, I do want to clarify. I understand it's just ignorance. You know, my co-host on my show is a privileged white guy. He's very open about it. And what I love about him is like how much he's grown. You guys,
For
like,
sure.
I think the community hasn't been privy to a lot of the conversations that many of us have had to have, like, you know, in the back. So, you know, things will be going on, and the why is this bad? And did you just ask that? Like those kind of conversations. But but that is, I would say that is mostly the kind of response that we get from people. There's a lot of frustration with a lot of people, like, well, why is that bad? I don't understand. And I understand that you don't understand. And I don't hate that you don't understand. I love that you're open about it. And I love that you're willing to hear my side. And, you know, there's been a couple of people who, you know, want to say, well, let's agree to disagree. But there's been very few people still around that have just outright denied that, you know, my lived experience is valid. And
Sure.
I don't know if I maybe just like being an atheist and being in a community where you're feeling uplifted, but like the euphoria with that, where people are just like, no, I get you, I hear you, what you're saying is valid, from somebody outside of your group. I don't know. I don't know if you know like how thankful we really are just being able to have that.
It's a gratitude thing about being able to be seen, because like I know what you're saying, Jay, when you say like the white boy problem, right? Almost like, hey, can we actually pass the atheist paper bag test? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that a difference is, so like for a person who happens to be of our race and what comes with that, plus being a non-believer, agnostic, atheist, is that, as much as we would love to like, pontificate on who did a logical fallacy today, we also have to wonder about I mean, come on, like, listen, I bought a
Yes.
whole philosophy book for dummies because I wanted to get it, right?
Right. Yes.
And I mean,
yes.
like, and now that stuff is like interesting, and you should know it. That way you can be able to kind of see through people's arguments and see where they're flawed.
And it is helpful. Let me
It
be
is.
clear. It has,
It
it
is.
is helpful in conversation with people for sure.
It's very helpful, but on the other side, you have to think about too, okay, I also have to concern myself that if I have a long distance drive at night, depending on where I am, will I get stopped and come home? Because I don't know if I'm going to get shot by a police officer who may think that there's a gun in my pocket and it was just really my cell phone, and even if we were to say that, oh, well, that only happens to Black men. No, Black women get pulled over and shot too, and like, and we live in a time where unrest is very much so part and parcel of like this, the American society, and we have to consider, we can't just put aside Blackness for a day. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
that's very much so part of our lived experience. You're not just a person that I'm an atheist that happens to be Black. No, I'm a Black person that happens to be an atheist. And what's going to precede me is that Blackness every time, no matter who I'm talking to, because like you're going to deal with implicit and explicit bias, right? And the implicit bias would be not being able to see a lot of us on platforms that would put up atheist voices. They'll get a Seth Andrews, they'll get a Matt
Cynthia,
Dillon.
I think we're getting the sound thing from your.
Okay,
went away.
Okay, I messed with my
You
cord.
good?
Okay,
good.
cool.
Okay.
Okay, I messed with my cord. But yeah, like like you and like, not to get on Seth Andrews or Matt Dillahunty, both very lovely people, but at the same time, like, those are your go-to atheists, and they all happen to be white and male. But
Yes.
like but like I and Mandisa in the chat, I mess with her all the time. Like, when you Google Black atheist, literally her picture comes up, right?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Like, you are the representation.
By the
for
way,
the entire...
congratulations.
Right.
Yes.
right.
And the award goes to
Right. The Blackest atheist in the world. Give it up to Mandisa Thomas.
Yes,
Girl, when you come up here and get your award, don't you dare thank God. That's all I'm like.
Don't you do it.
Don't you do it, girl. Don't you do it. Yeah, but no, but seriously, like, that's part, like, we can't ever put away that identity. I remember, like, shout out to Jena Miyu, did a video with
Yes,
Black
Jena.
Atheist Rants a couple of years ago, talking about Black atheists and what does it mean to be a Black atheist and whatnot. It was a really good video that was produced by Normalizing Atheism, and it was a few comments that was under there saying, why do we have to separate Black atheists from just atheists? Why can't we just all just be one community? I said, because there's going to be some issues and some things that we're going to deal with as being a Black person, number one, that you don't have to be concerned about. Okay.
Right.
And so we need spaces like this in order for us to be able to, you know, not only acknowledge ourselves, but also be able to acknowledge what that means to us to actually be living in a time period like this, being Black. And then on that part, you know, take the whole portion of like, and now we are adding non-belief. I remember there was a meme that I used to put up sometime that said that, you know, I'm too nerdy to hang with the Black people, but I'm too Black to hang with the white people. So like we're kind of like stuck in between this thing here, because like, you know, I'm not, my Blackness is going to show regardless. I mean, just look at me, right? Before I even open up my mouth. But there's another part of me that is not always going to be accepted by my own community, because I don't accept the thing that they have used to bind themselves together for like centuries. And that's that theism, right? So we have to kind of unpack what that means and how to like use that in order to kind of like, you know, build up like I don't know if like a duality is a great thing to say, but that's for lack of a better term, to really, you know, to really like, you know, flesh out what does this whole thing mean to be not only a Black atheist, because you can say Black atheist in of itself, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a free thinker, right? That, you know, because being an atheist is just one position. But then but if you say you're like a Black free thinker, you're saying that I'm going to use critical thinking and skepticism to actually lead me, instead of like, you know, faith, woo-woo, or, you know, things that just are not reasonable. Right. So, you know, it's a thing that like, I think that like a lot of us are, you know, I know that me personally, I'm still trying to like, you know, figure what that means. And sometimes I'm like, yes, I got it. And sometimes I'm like,
Yeah. No, yeah.
And I just real quick, because I do want to hear from you, gentlemen. I don't know, like I want to commit crimes when people are like, well, why do you need your space? And I'm just like, because everybody's different and everybody has a separate experience. Like there's little things that I've noticed. Like there's a lot of ex-Christians in the community that live in southern states, and I can tell. It helps me know who I'm talking to. If I know that you're from the South, I know that you had a harder struggle than someone who is a Christian in the North, or I know that your current experience is a lot harder than an atheist in the North, and that there are nuanced ways that I speak to different people, just knowing that one thing. We are all American citizens. Living in the North and in the South gives you a different experience. Being a man, being a woman, being cis, being trans gives you a different experience. But being Black, and then it's just like, well, why do you need that? Why is it so different? And I'm like, well, maybe you could just listen. I mean, you know, and I think it's important to know the experience. And I'm, you know, always on this like diversity kick of mine. But a lot of people want to see the normalization of non-belief. And I think it's going to behoove a lot of us to understand the nuances of the individuals in the community and what we're struggling with, and what we are able to excel with as you're, I mean, I guess you could just moan and bitch. I mean, that, you know, that's the thing. But if you're actually trying to move forward, if you're putting any action into your words, you have to know the animal that you're dealing with. And America just is an empire. So it's going to look different, and, you know, depending on where you're moving.
Can I mention something really quick? Robin, oh my gosh, are you serious that there are white flat earth atheists? What is wrong with you? That's all I gotta say. That's just weird and wrong. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
like,
hilarious.
you know, I refuse to talk to anybody that's a flat earther. Like, I just absolutely refuse. Like,
Same,
yeah,
same.
I
That's
give,
beyond the pale for you.
yeah,
Okay.
it is like that's my line. That is my line. I mean,
You
because
can't-
like
the Earth is
Maya's
visibly
the same way.
round.
Maya, right? Maya does a whole
The
bad
Earth is
science
visibly
show, but she
round.
doesn't want to do.
How
She
am
doesn't
I
want to do
going?
flat Earth.
How do you have a conversation with somebody who doesn't believe their own eyes?
right. I mean,
Oh,
like you can
man.
see the curvature of the Earth, my dude. What are you talking about? Oh my gosh! Like, stop.
This is
I'm
true.
sorry. Oh,
It is.
we
It is.
got another
I just want to
super
make
chat
something clear,
real
y'all.
quick. Yeah.
All of these people host this show. This is everybody's show. Jena should be here. Jena had to stay at work. We ain't wanna put no pressure, but Jena should be here. So you might see any and all combinations of these people hosting this show. We just kind of wanted to get together for the first few, just so y'all could get a feel for who the crew is. Maya,
Oh, man.
something you touched on. A lot of times our spaces are without us. I just want people to think about that. So what I'm getting at is a lot of times when people move into good neighborhoods and good jobs and good schools, incidentally, those are the spaces where we're not. And people should think about that the next time they ask a Black person why we need our own spaces. Like, really? But I want to say something too, which is I want to commend the people for being here. Part of this thing is us coming together and sharing our narrative and articulating our experience and supporting each other and hopefully creating another space to attract more Black free thinkers and give them a space where they feel like, oh man, this is so for people like me, like we didn't have, right?
Yes.
But also for all the people who think this is worth their time, right? When they see that other content out there, they go, no, I'm gonna check this out. Like that means a lot that y'all are here because that's how you power up. And I just wanted to share this. One of the most powerful things I say when I'm talking to another person who has intersectional diversity, whatever it might be, and we're talking about a colleague at work, I'll say, they know they don't know. And what that means is like I'm talking about somebody who what we would say is they're trying to be an ally, right? And it's a lot of people who have really strong ideas and they want to help do diversity, but they're going to tell you how it has to go. And then you have other people who have something they bring to the table, institutional leverage, power, their position in an organization, their ability to have certain expertise. But they like, when it comes to changing this culture thing, I know I don't know, and I know this is a space where y'all need to lead. And so that shorthand, when I say they know they don't know, that means they're here to help us, and they're not going to tell us what needs to happen. We're going to tell them what needs to happen, and they're going to ask us how they can help, right? And so people who show up
Yes.
with that attitude of, I know that I don't know, but I'm here to learn, like, yes, that's what I think Maya was getting at when she said it's ignorance. We mean that in the positive way. Like you're in that, I know that I don't know, so I'm here. And I think that's mostly what I've gotten, right? You talk about like for the most part, it's positive. Most people I think have that attitude and they're happy to. So yeah. Maya, I wanted to ask you about what was it like for you growing up, like your interaction with faith, like personally, just because they kind of
I
mentioned
grew
their
up
background a little
Catholic,
bit.
and so I don't have the religious trauma. Catholics are not science deniers at all, and the people I grew up around were insanely secular. There were colloquial things that I think transcended religion. Like boys were treated differently than girls, and oh God, there were a lot of expectations on me that I understood came from Christianity, but it was more like, it's not ladylike. It's not what girls do. Why does my brother get to do that? Because he's a boy. So like a lot of the things that I went through, I understand they have like the roots in Christianity, but was more of like a sign of the times, like just
Mm.
you would have experienced it being Christian or not. So I don't know. Growing up Catholic and Black was interesting. I mean, say
Yeah, I was gonna
interesting.
ask. I
I
was gonna
couldn't
ask you
relate to
that.
anyone. I mean, outside of just not being able to relate to anybody that was Black, never being Black, you know,
Were
because I
y'all
didn't
like
do the Black
were there other
things.
Black families in your Catholic church, or?
Yeah, but they didn't want to send their kids. They were like Baptist and Protestant, but they didn't want to send their kids to public schools. So the
Yeah.
only, I mean, like almost all the private schools, like seriously, there's one non-Catholic private school in town. One. And
Oh, so
so I
you
mean,
were
yeah.
Black Catholic but went to public school.
No, I went to a Catholic daycare.
Wow.
Okay.
This goes way back.
You are deep in the Gregorian chant, girlfriend.
Well, because I went to Catholic school most of my upbringing, in mostly white schools, and so that was very weird too, because the Catholic school I was the only Black person, and then that was very different than like the non-denominational church I went to, which was quite mixed, but kind of had that Caucasian persuasion, right? Because when we come together, that's what happens when we get with unity, right? Just being real. But then that was very different than like my family, right? Because my grandparents are Pentecostal ministers, so that was like hardcore, like Kojic, like Black Pentecostal, and then my dad's African Methodist Episcopal, so that's like very, very, very Black too. So there was definitely denominational, racial interactions that were very difficult to navigate growing up. I'll put it that way. And it also led me to a period like Darante talked about, where deconverting took a long time. I have a really hard time even placing it. Like, I envy people who can even like place years. It's very hard for me to be like, this happened this year, and then 3 years. Like, I don't know. It's just all a blur. But for a long time, for a long time, I saw it as just learning. And then the more I learned, the more different my beliefs were, but I didn't see myself as a non-believer.
Yeah.
And then for the longest time, I saw myself as a Christian and an atheist. Like, I saw myself, like, I still identified as a Christian. I just didn't believe any of the claims anymore, like the fundamental claims. Like, I was like, I don't, that probably didn't really happen. But I'm a Christian. I'm just, yeah, all right, yeah, So you do that dance for a long time, and then I felt like that was really rejected by both sides. Like, Christians told me you couldn't really be a Christian unless you believed the fundamental things, and then atheists kept telling me like you can't claim to be a Christian if you don't. They kept saying the same thing. They were all in agreement that I didn't fit. And then I remember there was like a creationist group that manipulated a student group when I was in grad school at Michigan State. And they like challenged my colleagues, like my advisors, people I worked for, because they wanted to have this debate. And so they were creationists and they wanted to debate the evolutionary biologist, right? Because I was in grad school to become an evolutionary biologist. And I remember that was the first time I really felt like I don't want to be associated with those people. Like, there's a people who are causing a scene. There's like this whole drama. They acting the fool. Everybody's passing around the flyers. Would you get a load of these people? What are we gonna do? There's a whole counter operation. And I'm like, look, I don't want to mess with the people no more. And so that was the first time it kind of, being a Christian wasn't cute, right? That's what I reflect on at that time. That was one of those times where really, like, for the first time, being a Christian wasn't cute anymore. And I felt like I had a professional out. I felt like as a scientist, right? I had I understood that you could do both. Let's be clear. I understood that you could be
Yeah,
an evolutionary biologist and be a Christian. You could be a scientist and be a Christian, but you couldn't be a Christian for scientific reason. So when you go over here in your faith, you're doing something
that's good.
different. And so I felt like that was a inconsistency I just could more easily just not deal with, right? Just be like, I'm gonna just be scientific all the time. And when y'all show me the evidence, I'll believe it, right? And I felt like that was just more professionally consistent, if that made sense. So that made it easy. And I've always been grateful for that. I've always felt like that was sort of a professional thing that made it a bit easier maybe than it is for other people. But to my point about Darante's story is I still didn't really want to leave. And so for the longest time, I still participated in worship ministries. I'm a drummer. I still was very active in the church. I just didn't believe anymore. And really, I tried to maintain some of those relationships even when the pandemic started, and I would like watch the services and stuff like that online.
Yes.
But really, when they got ready to go back and they sent out the little message, everybody get ready, get your instruments together, get ready to practice. Yeah, we about to get back together. Start. And I was like, because I'm at high risk and it was just way too soon. I was like, no, we not.
Nope.
But that was really where, I hate to say it, but it called my bluff. It was like I could do it when it was a community engagement process, because it gave me an opportunity to talk to them, to have conversations about science. It was cute to do that as a non-believer, to stay in community and be different. But when it got to no, they really believe Jesus is about to bless them and carry them through a pandemic worship service, I was like, nah, I don't. No, I don't have that in me no more. So, but yeah, it was a whole process and it was a lot of things. And I just want people to see that. I think for a lot of Black people and maybe a lot of other people, like changing your beliefs don't necessarily mean you all the way ready to leave the church or stop identifying as a Christian. It's so deep in us that even if we don't believe anymore, we still trying to find some kind of way to stay connected to what's going on.
I think a part of that is because belief becomes so much bigger after deconverting, right? So before deconverting, if someone asks you what you believe, you like trigger responses. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. I believe in the Lord. And so when you really start deconverting, it's never just one big thing that you stop believing in. It's small things that you stop believing in,
Yes.
until it becomes these big things, which what you're doing at that moment is reacclimating yourself with how to learn things. The same way you are not believing these small things, and it's those small things that are leading you to the other bigger things, so maybe it starts with something like scriptural accuracy, that maybe this isn't inerrant, and then you're okay with it not being perfect. You still believe that there's a nice Jesus out there, but then maybe you get and you realize like, well, holy snap, there's problems with this whole idea of resurrection. And then it just kind of continues to build, and it becomes a very interesting thing, because you don't even know that you've let go of things that have changed your social structure until you've gotten to that point. At first, it's just you going on a personal journey.
Yeah.
And it's just your personal theology.
Yeah.
And then somewhere in that process, it hits you like, holy crap, this is going to change my whole life. This is going to change some things about who I am. Some people are not going to be happy with these thoughts that I have. And again, I say it's like belief becomes bigger to you, because now you couldn't answer that question with the trigger response. If somebody came to you now and said, what did you believe? The automatic response now is, about what? About which thing? What are you talking about? That, it's this kind of, and so it's just belief has become so much bigger on this side. And it's a maze.
So I want to get y'all input on something while we have some time. And there's two things that converge for me, and I want to get your thoughts on them. So one, shout out to Robin Webster, sent me a clip. Apparently there's like a Republican lieutenant governor, Black guy, that said some folks need
Mark
to be
Robinson.
killed. Yeah, he said some folks need offing, need deleting. Pull the plug. And he was talking about liberals, right? He was talking about people on the left and their kind of, woke ideology and all this stuff. And at the same time, there's a lot of talk about white evangelical Christian nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, literally, like, I'm gonna just sharing with y'all, this is straight shower talk. Because today I was in the shower, right? And I really thought to myself, really kind of for one of the first times, like, there's been something that I feel is so biased and wrong about this, and I finally could articulate it. And I was like, they talk about it as though Black people can't be Christian nationalists. And I'm like, I don't know if they think it's like they've just never been in a Black church to hear a Black preacher say some clearly Christian nationalist stuff and been like, oh, this is the same thing, so maybe we should talk about it more broadly. Or if they assume like Black people, in large numbers maybe don't vote Republican as much, so they're thinking we're not the problem because they're not conservatives or they don't. But I think whether it is what you say his name was,
Mark Robinson,
whether it's the Mark Robinsons of the world who are explicitly on the right, or even just people who maybe aren't around that because they think the racism or whatever, if you strip aside their political affiliation and just get to know those people, they're very much on that same tip. And to us, right, I think it feels like a lot of the Black Christianity is incredibly conservative. And then when you sort of layer that with this almost feeling and treatment like you're not really Black if you're not a Christian, as if to say you're not truly a Black American if you're not Christian, that makes it feel even more like Black Christian nationalism, which makes it feel like, how could y'all ignore that this is going on over here too? So I just realized, like, it's just so good to say that in front of some people.
Well, I think that one of the things that when we're trying to kind of dissect that whole web of Christian nationalism, I remember listening to this young man say, I think he said it on CNN, that Christian nationalism is the religion of white supremacy. And when you hear your Mark Robinsons, your Candace Owens, your that other chick that sometimes comes on PragerU, I can't remember her name at this particular time. You're just
like Amala or something like that.
Yeah, Amala something.
Yes, Amala. Yes.
Yeah, that girl. Her. You have these people who are embracing the talking points that come with that whole group of Christian nationalism or Christian nationalism ideology. But in actuality, they're just Black people that's embracing white supremacy with the Christian feel. That's it. And you're going to still have Black Christians on the other side that are going to be more left-leaning, because being more left-leaning is actually in the interest of Black folks here in the States. Let's just keep it a buck. Most of when we look at social justice work throughout the years, when we look at affirmative action, when we have looked at voters' rights, when we have looked at, even like landmark cases like Brown versus the Board of Education, like all of those things were considered leftist policies, even though that they were like before our time per se. But, and then even where we're looking at issues that like really affect us as a community, they like, say for instance, like we were talking about actually teaching proper history in school, instead of saying that, slavery was, instead of slavery, it was like involuntary relocation. Or some mess that they come
some
up
euphemism,
with.
Yeah.
Right. Or that they want to do away with, everybody who happens like that's Black that happens to have like a decent job because they have a good education is a DEI hire. Right. Like all these things are, basically all of these things are just like reinvented dog whistles to the right in order for them to like call out that this is a bad policy because it's probably going to help Black folk. And we really don't want that. So you know, you're still, even though that you're going to have like, you know, Black folk that are Christians that may be more so leaning towards like conservatism, they're not all, it's not still a large portion of the community that's going to do that because it's not within their interest.
Right.
Now, the ones who have kind of like got off they'll tell you that they got off the liberal train, right? Because they felt that those who happen to be maybe in the Democratic Party have been more taking advantage or taking for granted the Black vote. And
you do hear that, yes.
Yeah, and you know what? And you know what? They're right. They have.
Yes.
Mhm.
They
Yeah,
have.
sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if we really look at policies that are espoused on the left versus policies that are espoused by the right, I can't think of one policy on the right that's going to do us good as a community. Not a one. I mean, like, I was like, okay, great. I get that you're frustrated with the Dems. I get that. And you know what? I'm frustrated with you. But let me ask you something. If you're actually going to go to the elephant side, where's the home for you?
Yeah.
I mean, let's keep it a buck. Where is the home
Yeah.
for you? Like, what specific? Because like I remember specifically Mitch McConnell saying this when Barack Obama became president, and he was and I believe, I don't know if he was Senate majority. I think he was Senate minority leader at the time. And then 2 years afterwards, like there was this, you know, the Tea Party just like cleaned up, and he became the Senate majority leader. And he said that we're going to be the party of no. Like, we're not going, while this man is in office, we are not going to work with him. We're not going to work with anybody who even wants to do anything that Obama even thinks is good, remotely good, right? Even if it's going to be something that could be a benefit to the entire country, we're not going to do it because he's behind it, right? Because he's the face of the party.
Right.
So, you know, so then it just became, instead of being a party that's like looking out for, you know, things that will probably build the infrastructure for the country so that everybody can do well, we're just going to say no to everything, and anything that remotely possibly looks anywhere near decent for a minority group has got to go in the trash. You know, that's why we have like a packed court that was mostly given who were basically recommended by the Heritage Foundation.
Yes, the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and I mean, and also this is another reason why we have a Project 2025, which, you know, I find it so ironic that, you know, that, you know, a certain person is trying to run away from like the plague. But I mean, but hey, the people who support you put this forward. And, you know, one of the authors of Project 2025 was the Heritage Foundation. You know,
Yes.
This is also, we got the Watchmen people from Kenneth Copeland's network that, you know, did the Watchmen on the Wall. That was like a very, just like that whole Seven Mountains prayer thing, you know.
Seven Rounds mandate.
Yeah. You know, like all this other stuff. And like, but when you really look at this, these are just dog whistles. This is just nothing but the Southern strategy, like retooled, repushed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You talk about
No, it's the same. It's the same Southern strategy. It always was.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, nothing's changed. It's just moved with the time.
Right. Yeah. Before it was like, okay, we're going to be the issue that we're going to have is like, now we got integration. We're going to have to get rid of that. But now it's not too cool to say the N-word anymore. So then like the new thing that we're going to come against is abortion. But trust, like even them rallying behind, you know, turning back Roe v. Wade was all because racism was on the front line, and also segregation was, you know, being and Jim Crow was being dismantled because of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So the right just needed a new dog whistle.
Well, I mean, and you got to remember the whole. It was about them not having their tax exempt status for their Christian schools.
Yeah, Bob Jones University and Liberty University.
Yeah, seething mad because, you know, they wanted their schools that they could keep Black kids out of, and
Right.
they wanted their tax exempt status
Right.
along with it. And they've been working very hard, probably the past couple of years, especially with these vouchers, which I thought was really interesting. It was a study, or the numbers came out to show that we didn't move anybody from public school to private school. Parents who had never had their children in a public school were now using vouchers, sucking the money out of public schools to fund their kids in private school. They were going to have it anyway. They could already afford it anyway. And so now for the kids who can't even afford the free school, we're taking money away from them. So they are getting, I don't know. I think it's that we could talk about education reform.
People often don't even.
I want to bring it back around to
realize.
James' question. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say people often don't even realize the connection between like the rise in Christian schools and all of that and integration. The fact that was the countermeasure, right? It was like, oh, they're gonna force us to integrate the public schools. Oh, well, we're gonna start Catholic schools and private schools and all this other stuff. Sorry, go ahead, Maya.
No, I just wanted to go back to your original question though, where we're talking about I want to make the distinction between the PragerU crowd and Black Christians, like the super conservative Black Christians, because what is it that they say? Like there's a fine line, or there's a hard distinction between a good troll and the real thing.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of what you're seeing here, because Jay, you and I have had a couple of conversations where if the Republican Party would just stop trying to eliminate us, they could have most of us, because Black people are insanely conservative. Conservative.
Yes.
They would love to vote against abortion if it weren't also tied to Black concentration camps.
Yes.
And like a lot of the other stuff, like the whole family values, and
the
I can't tell you, like the manosphere always talking about how Black women need to know their place.
Excuse me, Maya, you can't say manosphere because I break out in hives. Thank you.
Fair. No, that is the correct response, actually. But, I mean, it's not, and when we talk about, people like Kevin Samuels, may he rest in hell. He's talking to more Black men than he is white men. And so is Andrew Tate. I mean, if we're keeping it real. Black men are to the point where it's hard for me to date them, because like they're just so conservative and so by the book, and I'm the man and I have to make more money and you're the woman, so you have to cook every day, and it gets insane.
And they'll lay it out there for you, right? Like, this is what I expect. Like,
first date, can you cook?
Yeah, they
Wow.
what was it? All I'll call them the Samuelites, like the acolyte, like the Samuelites, like, what do you bring to the table? And I'm like,
for those that don't know, Kevin Samuels is like a Black conservative. Devil. He kind of put himself out there as like a dating guru, like how to man correctly, and then he turned out to be a fraud because, of course, how to troll the Black women. And can I touch on this real quick too?
Yes.
Because this is one of these things where I'm loving the opportunity to highlight this for some people in our audience. I remember when like TD Jakes got caught up with Puff Daddy, and that was in the news.
Yeah.
And I talked about it on the stream. There were so many people who their response to me was, "Who is TD Jakes?"
Mm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it helped highlight to me that we have different celebrities in our culture.
For sure.
Because for a lot of them, like TD Jakes is not a name they had heard before. Right. And I'm like, and I had to explain, like, as far as Black people are concerned, this is one of the most famous pastors on the planet. Like, that doesn't really get more famous. We all grew up riding around.
But you know what's funny about
TD Jakes on the radio? What's
funny about that?
It's required.
It's actually not, though. It's only if you were Black Christian a certain way. Because
Right.
once you run
Yes.
across Black Seventh-day Adventists, they're going to give you the same response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, who's Bishop James?
Yes.
Yeah, or
That's
like
true.
some Black
That's true.
Jehovah Witness, or we're not even gonna bring up the Israelites. We're just
Oh my goodness.
yeah, we're just not.
Look, hush your mouth.
Right. I mean, like, I know, right? I brought up Manosphere. I say, okay, that's gonna give me highs. I brought up the Israelites, and you be like, oh my God.
You know, that's a whole other show.
Right.
It's a whole other show.
It
Stay
is.
tuned.
Black
That's gonna be a
people
show.
who shall
That's
not be
definitely gonna-
named.
Right,
You know
right.
that's gonna be a
Israelites
show.
and the Last Dragon. Show enough.
Right. Show enough. Right. Who's better? Show enough. And this guy's like, I'm not talking about like Jewish people. I'm talking about a specific religious group called the Black Hebrew Israelites. They're a whole different thing.
Yes.
Right. Pan, yes. Burn some sage, some lavender, get your smellings, all that. And hopefully you can shoo the purple robes away. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Come on now.
Wait, hang on a second though. Somebody T-Mac. $10. T-Mac, we appreciate the $10. Even more appreciate the comment. I'm an atheist because of Cynthia, and also here so I don't get fined.
Yeah. The next meetup, T, I was like, you need to pay your fine.
That's huge. Native atheist, thank you so much for the super sticker. Really appreciate that.
Yes.
Man, this is so much. All right, so here's another thing. You said a lot of the, because here's how they, that's why I brought it up, because that is how they appeal to them, right? They use the same Christian traditional values, the conservative stuff that would be conservative, is it like if Maya said, if it wasn't also sort of earmarked with racism.
Right.
But I remember reflecting on the aesthetic I grew up with, where it was basically like there are how do I say this? A lot of the Christianity was also associated with upward mobility.
Yes.
And then that was associated with a certain aesthetic that was very anti-Black, right? Because you dressed a certain way, you wanted to have certain jobs, you wanted to live in a certain neighborhood, drive a certain type of car, even go to church with them people, you know, live in the gated community. All those things that are traditionally aspirational and associated with upward mobility, they're very much, even in the Black community, tied to your Christianity. So the way you look on church is the good look, right?
Yeah.
And then we saw hip hop, saggy clothes, baggy, you know, hat backwards, caps on your head, whatever, all of that stuff, anything that didn't fit into that aesthetic as being bad. And then I'm not talking about white people, I'm talking about as Black people. Even within my family, this dynamic, right? And it's horrifying.
It's kind of like what, going back to what Darante said about, you know, when you're in like the Christian church, like it lends itself to pretending. And a lot of us in the community bought into that whole prosperity doctrine because we thought that if we prayed and we fasted and we gave tithe and first fruit and you know your additional alms to the pastor for preaching a word that was sure enough good, you know, you did that thing, pastor. I was like, yes, all those deepities that came out here which way in the third. Yes, I take all my money. And, you know, a lot of us, including myself, I remember leaving the church like flat ass broke. Like on sometimes
I remember emptying my wallet into a collection plate. Like literally,
right. I've given. I remember
you don't have to worry about none of that being Catholic.
No, you don't. You're right. You so right. You so right. Because ain't nobody about to guilt you because the Catholics own everything anyway. So you know they don't got to guilt you.
I mean, you know, Catholics don't be Holy Ghosting.
No,
that's right.
Right. Ain't no. You know, there's 10 of you right now that can give $1,000, and the Spirit of the Lord is telling me that you need to come here right now so that you can get your A blessing. Get up here right now. People be running. That $1,000 ain't enough to pay all your bills anyway. You come up in this line right now.
I bought that. Yes, I've literally yes.
Yeah, all that, and you know, and it goes back to like, okay, well, if I do all this, all of a sudden I can live like Claire and Cliff Huxtable. you know?
Mhm.
But it's a lie. I mean, it's basically like us trying to again buy into this whole capitalistic American dream that just does not exist for us as a community. Because if it did, we would not own 2% of the wealth in the United States right now.
Mhm.
You hear what I'm saying? And
Yes.
and even though like less than 2% of us actually own the wealth in the United States, but an overwhelming part, almost 80% of us are Christian, right?
Yeah.
So it raises a question that I have to ask Black Christians, because like as much as like I've been in the services where the pastor called for the $1,000, the $500, the $200, the $100, and then give what you can line, and you give and you give and you give. But the only thing that it seems like the person that's like constantly coming to church with a new Denali, a new Mercedes, a new Bentley with the suicide doors, come on somebody, is the pastor.
Is the pastor. Absolutely.
And but telling you,
Absolutely.
oh, all you got to do is just pray your way out, fast your way out, give your way out, etc., etc. But you still driving that 1988 Chrysler New Yorker that got a really bad filter that you can't get that thing fixed to save your life, and you still burning oil. But by the grace of God, you make it to church every Sunday. Ho sha ta ta ta. And let the church say, yeah. Amen.
Well, I mean, you gotta go to church, because like if you don't go to church, then you gotta hear about it from everybody.
Yeah.
Yep.
You gotta hear about it from everybody.
You might even be told about yourself.
Yeah.
Darante, I'm gonna kick it to you. I want to serve you up with a line though. You said this on your channel. It's one of the dope. I almost fell out my chair. You talked about Black folks not having the excess, not having the resources to begin with to be able to afford that. And I think that's what Cynthia's story was highlighting.
For sure. For sure. And it's like you have to think what happens to a people if you bind their idea of upward mobility to compliance, which as Black folk in America, you're going to get that on two sides. You're going to get that from your Bible, which is going to be reinforced through your parents. Compliance is the way to success. That is the message. And then you're also going to get that on the social side. Like I remember when deconverting, one of the most damaging things that my grandparents used to say was, "This is a white man's world," and it was this idea that in order to be accepted, in order to be successful, in order to be progressive, you have to be compliant. As a child, my aunts and other women in the church would pull my mom to the side and be like, "You have to watch out for your son because he talks too much. They're going to get him. He thinks too much." And so there's this idea of success through compliance is then reinforced by a society that says it's okay to kill you if you don't comply. Christian nationalism is the most accurate version of Christianity that there can be. That is what is projected in the Bible. That's why parents literally told their children when I was growing up that if you walked across this pulpit and God didn't want you up there, God would kill you. And the parents are saying this, not thinking about what you're actually saying is your life is not if you are not compliant. And so if you fall out of this compliance at any moment, then, God gets you. And the only way to actually stay attached to that belief is to replace actual verifying belief with believing anecdotes. That's what creates the situation where Black folk will listen to something like PragerU or listen to somebody like whoever's running. As long as you say something that aligns with what Big Mama said or my pastor said or my bishop said, it sounds like the truth, and I dare not go against God because compliance is the only way to success.
That is so sinister.
Isn't it?
It's so sinister.
Well, I mean, but it's also very what's the word? Like self-preservation.
Yeah.
I mean,
because
especially in the South, in the South,
yes.
When you're saying that you're not that far from Birmingham, right? So we're talking about areas where not too long ago, definitely in his parents' time, Black people would get uppity and disappear. I'm sorry, disappear.
Yep.
Yes.
And the chilling effect was so bad that people wouldn't even ask where they went.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Like this is self-preservation. I'm trying to keep my child alive. That's what I hear. And then when I hear the stories from a Black man in the South, that's what I hear. And I know the girls like us from around Chicago, we didn't have to worry about that per se. We weren't worried about being disappeared. We had different socioeconomic factors that were going to keep us down, certainly.
Yeah.
Sure.
But the South, is still a couple of decades behind us,
Oh, for sure.
So when I hear that, I hear that's a mom, a Southern mom that is truly just trying to keep your head down. Don't look around. I want to see my grandbabies from you.
Yeah, they were trying to keep us alive, and I think that's a really important point. And also, the things have shifted. Like when I look at my grandparents, and everything is God. I mean, everything. They pick up the phone, praise the Lord, and they're in their sunsetting stages, and it's very difficult to see, but I can feel that they genuinely were doing their best, and that time being a good Christian and trying to do the whole thing. I always say this: Black people have always been using Christianity to audition for full citizenship, and it has never worked. But I recognize that's what they were trying to do. That's a t-shirt.
That's a t-shirt. Oh my gosh. Put that on the merch list for real. Oh my goodness. Bars, son. Bars.
I appreciate you. Look, they want us to get up out of here. Let me make sure that we do a few things. Let me make sure I go around the panel and give everybody the opportunity to give some closing thoughts. I'm gonna go in reverse order so we can finish with the lovely ladies, and I'm gonna just repeat it. Black people have always tried to use Christianity to audition for full citizenship, and it has never worked. Darante, what you want to close with?
Oh man, how do you come behind that? Yikes.
I know,
right? I guess my closing thought with this whole conversation, perfect. A few years ago, I realized that there was an issue even amongst churches. You mentioned mixed churches earlier, churches where there's mixed congregations, and that how those churches would still seem to default towards the Caucasian persuasion.
Yes.
and that's actually not an isolated event. When you survey churches, those that are mixed congregations, the majority of them, and when I say majority, I'm not talking about 60, I'm not talking about 70, I'm not talking about 80. I'm talking about over 95% of churches that are mixed congregations are led by a white pastor. What it ended up creating a conversation for, and this was very awkward, and I literally had this conversation, is that white people didn't feel comfortable being led by a Black senior pastor. I had literally hired a white associate pastor to help integrate my church more. Let's be integrated. And he resigned after about 3 months with tears in his eyes, saying, I cannot do this. I feel, he almost, it was incredibly uncomfortable for him. And it really, I had to sit with that, because I'm like, well, damn, you can't be the only one, because apparently anywhere where we're the pastor, y'all won't integrate with us.
Right.
But when you're the leader, we come in with no problem. And I realized that had created an illusion of integration amongst churches, because we said we had these mixed churches. My closing thought is, in our secular communities, let's be careful not to do that.
Wow.
Let's be careful to be mindful of those dynamics.
Wow. That's powerful. All right, Maya, you up next.
Oh, that's just mean. No, that is poignant. Holy crap. And it reminds me so much. What you're saying, I don't know, I've just got a lot of studies in my head, but I do want to thank Skeptic Haven for hosting this and allowing us to come. And like, there's been a lot of people here, and I am so thankful for all of you for being here to listen, for listening to our stories, and you know, joining, being active in the chat and sharing your own stories, because this is community, you know. This is, and this is what it's going to take to listen to each other, and this is how we become stronger, and this is how you as an individual become stronger too. I really, really, really want everybody here to remember that losing a God belief doesn't make you a skeptic. All right, and I'll pass it on to Cynthia.
I love that. Yes.
I have nothing. Everybody just like drop bars and like, and I'm just like sitting here like, I don't know. I'm sitting here giving instructions on how to like get my kid ready for bed and make sure you get his diaper from the closet. That's all I got to say. No, this has been great, you know, and I always enjoyed, you know, having these conversations, especially amongst my people. And I also very much so appreciate people who happen to be from different communities to come and listen to Black folk, and especially like, you know, Black irreligious people really talk about their experiences and what it means to be, you know, not only Black person in America, but Black atheist person in America, Black non-believer, Black agnostic, a Black questioning person, a Black skeptic, because those things are important. And you know, I remember James Baldwin saying on one of the black and white shows from back in the day that, and I think that he mentioned, and Malcolm X said it, that, you know, 12 o'clock on Sunday morning is the most segregated hour in America. You know, right. and unfortunately, we are still in that particular way. It's that particular guise of that the only way that I can actually fellowship is if I have white leadership, right? Yep. And no, and if we really want to call ourselves like a community that can be inclusive, like, you know, then we need to not necessarily be a colorblind community, but we need to acknowledge our differences and embrace them so that we can move forward together as a community. And I'm definitely looking forward to the next conversation that we have. Shout out to everybody who gave in the super chat.
Absolutely.
Skeptic Haven is monetized. Give. So that more conversations can happen.
Thank y'all so
like
much.
This.
For the chats, for the super chats. You can find Darante LaMar at Darante LaMar on YouTube. You can find Cynthia at Cam Glamming on Linktree and X, and Maya Adkisson at Maya Adkisson on Pocket Locker 86. All right.
Oh, and the chat wants to know if there's going to be a Gather after party.
Oh, of course, the after parties and gather. Y'all already know. Y'all can find me at Pocket Locker 86. I want to thank the patrons, Puck, Helen, Greene, Logan Fisher, Amanda McLeod, Eric Ozols, Rion, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Cindy Plaza, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, and Phil Calderone. Also, do not forget to check out the other shows on Skeptic Haven. Tuesdays, Secular Soapbox. Thursdays, The Sunny Spot. Saturdays, The Global Atheist and Women Atheist Unload. And Let's Talk on Sunday. And every other Monday, you will be right back here with us for Black Free Thinkers. I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. This has been so awesome. We will see y'all next time. Said I'm gone.